For the Beagle, the visit to this mysterious island group in the middle of the Pacific was no more than a stopover. For Darwin, the expedition lasted for 5 years, and of those 5 years, he spent only a month on the Galapagos. He collected a huge amount of specimens here, but only realized their significance later.
I think collecting doesn't necessarily have to have a real meaning behind it or purpose when you start.
Yeah.
It's just the innate passion for owning things and ordering them and putting them in their place. Darwin collected thousands, but I've only been able to...
labels and the position, the ship's position at the time.
Actually, the date, the time, and the exact position, because otherwise it's meaningless.
And Darwin wasn't always a very good collector at all, was he? I mean, he forgot to put labels on the finches from the Galapagos, from each different island. And when he got home, he had to rely on Fitzroy's notes.
You're right, he was not that rigorous. In the same collection where I borrowed this box from, there's some of the specimens that Darwin collected on the Beagle and sent home. And one of them, it's a very nice specimen, well-preserved beetle, but it just says South America on it. That's the only information.
That's not too good, is it?
No, it's not very helpful.
Of course he was a genius and extraordinary, but like all of us, he was a product of his time. Geology was really exciting at the time. Why was that? Because the Industrial Revolution, because canals were dug all over the country and you could see the strata, there it all is. And you can, for the first time, date different piles of sediment by the shells that are in them. And they're the same shells for hundreds of miles in every direction. You're getting a grip on time. And then you needed to travel. And the British Navy was conquering the seas of all the world. That was a tremendous opportunity. You could go more or less anywhere you wanted in the world. I think you needed that. You needed a huge amount of experience. And after all, he had 5 years of it. That's a very long time to think in your cabin. When you've seen all this, he had time to digest everything. Until Darwin's time, the notion was accepted that creation, as we saw it all around us, was complete. All animals and humans, all of nature, are fully developed, perfect. But when Darwin, once back home, started inspecting his collection of finches, he was struck by a number of remarkable similarities and differences.
We now know that one group of finches came over from South America and, say, for example, hypothetically speaking, arrived on this island here. And then what happened at some stage, well, they arrived in these islands and they would have adapted, they would have evolved to fit in with the conditions that they found on these islands. And at some stage, a group, or one pregnant female, flew off to another island where it finds a different set of conditions. So it then has to adapt to a new type of life. And then this one might split off again and fly to this island, finds a new set of conditions and has to adapt and evolve to fit those conditions. And this process can go on, and indeed we think it probably did, and it might be that eventually it hops onto this one, evolves a bit more, and comes back to the first one and meets its ancestor.
Darwin found many of the things he saw here very puzzling. These spectacular colours of the birds. Where does all this beauty come from? At first he tries to link it to physical conditions such as warmth and light. But later on, once back at home, and once he starts to think hard about the purpose of beauty, he becomes convinced that this has everything to do with the search for a mate. Evolution by sexual selection, his second great idea.